During the session, we may speak about forward-facing features that are in pilot or beta. Please make all your implementation, purchasing, and investment decisions based on what we have available now. Now let's get started with today's CodeLive session, converting app pages from Visualforce to Lightning with LWC.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Kevin Poorman. I'm a developer evangelist here at Salesforce, and we are going to be working on converting some old Visualforce pages into Lightning Web Component app pages. We're going to have an explanation of our problem today with my co-host, Brian Kwong. Brian has actually graciously provided a real-life example and solution set from his real life, and we're going to work through coding that solution with an emphasis not on building these independent Lightning Web Components, but actually how to make them talk to one another, get them on the page, integrate them with one another, etc. So you're going to see a lot of JavaScript and HTML, but we're going to be focusing on making them interact with one another, not necessarily just building out the structure. And then we'll have a recap here at the end. So with that, let me introduce Brian. Brian is the VP of Delivery and Operations at Better Partners, and he did not go to Hogwarts. You may know Brian better as Salesforce Wizard, and I've known Brian for probably, what, 7-10 years?
Feels like forever, Kevin.
Yeah, and with that, let's dive into what we're going to be working on today. Brian, you want to sort of walk us through the use case of what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I created a Visualforce page for a customer where it was supposed to make things a lot easier to be able to create a parent and the child records all at one time. It was replacing a paper form that they used to require people to fill out and fax back. And this solution made it so people can simply go to a website, fill in the information on the form, and it saved data in Salesforce. Then a bunch of stuff happened. And this has been working now for 5, maybe 6 years. And it works really well. But I built it on Visualforce back before Lightning components even came out. And so it's a little on the dated side. There are better ways to do it to make it look better, make it functional, more functional, and simply a better user experience. And that's essentially what we did today. So what we're going to take a look at is a Visualforce page. It's been slimmed down a little bit. I had to remove customer references and things like that, but the functionality is there. And we've taken that page and we moved a good chunk of that functionality over to a Lightning Web Component.
Awesome. So let's do that. And by the way, if you want to tune in and see the code afterwards, what we've done, this is the GitHub repository where you can see all of our work. So if you want to see how we did something specific, or maybe how we drew that layout, etc., you can always tune in and see that code there. So with that said, let's dive into the code. This is where I turn off the slides. Nope. Here we go. And I'm going to log into our Salesforce org. Now I've got my Salesforce org up over here, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to follow. And then we'll talk about what's going on here. So Brian, this is the Visualforce page that you created all those years ago. And tell us what's happening in these different sections.
So there's a couple of different sections here. The first one that's called sales rep information is actually fields from the parent record. So it's basically who's the salesperson that is putting this record behalf. And you know, it's pretty basic, right? Company name, email address, comments. But in the real world, there is a series of what they call agreement types, and depending on the agreement type that you are putting a form in for, there are different products that are applicable. Basically like a default. So in the background, I have a custom metadata that I go out and query, and I return back the records that includes the image, the description, the name or the code, as they called it, of what potential products could be. For today, I've hard-coded that to return 4 products. Not self-promoting whatsoever my blog or my or anything else. I'm absolutely self-promoting my blog.
Shameless.
Shameless. Absolutely shamelessly. And then there are also the occasion where people are going to have to add a different product because it's something outside of the product. So this case, Idea Wizard, which was an episode of the Wizardcast where we had folks coming on talking about idea exchange, Fanatic t-shirts, all the fun stuff. And so this really made it flexible to add, remove, update the requests that are coming in without having to deal with the paper form. And this really worked well. And it was an incredibly god-awful amount of Visualforce page code, and every time it needs to be updated, the whole thing gets touched. It is the whole page, the whole memory. Like, we literally will go through it and say, okay, there's going to be a window where this is not going to be available as we're doing deploys and testing. And that makes it very difficult. Plus, it looks ugly. I mean, look at that purple there and the little page block sections. And
I don't know, I kind of like the purple. Let's take a look at what our Lightning Web Component version looks like. So this Lightning Web Component version starts off with the same sort of questions, the email, company, name, and comments. And let's see what happens when we fill those out. So we'll do sloth and,
not a valid email.
And then we'll do sales rep company, magic bugs. Sloth is his name. He says hi. We'll create that partner agreement record. And that's the same sort of work that we were doing at the top of our Visualforce page, right?
Right.
And so that itself was a component, or was it multiple components?
That itself was a component. Well,
right.
in the Visualforce page, it's one big page, but here it's a component.
Here we've done it with a component. And now that we've actually created that partnership agreement, we're conditionally showing some other things, including these 4 product codes that we've created. And we're going to show how that works. And then over here, we've got the ability to add a new one. And our ability to add a new one is similar. It just looks slightly prettier. We've lost the nice purple, but here we've got the nice pretty. And so if I click submit new there, nothing's really happening. And that's because this is its own component over here, this right side bit. And then each one of these lines is their own component. And it's sitting inside of a overarching LWC card, right? So part of what we need to do today is look at how these components are built, but then also how do we make this component interact with this component? We want our new bit over here to be able to say, okay, if I add a new one, I really want it to show up in this list. And that's the sort of inter-component communication that we're going to work with today. So with that, I think we've had enough of a demo. Shall we go into code?
Oh yeah, that's where all the fun stuff is.
The dragon's here. Okay, so let me jump over to the code here, and let's start off with our top level component. This is the HTML for our basic partner agreement component. And you'll notice that the template has us in a lightning card, and then we have some conditional sub-templates. So if we don't have a partnership agreement, we're going to show the form that asks us to show the sales rep, sales company, sales rep names, comments, and then the button to create it. So this part here, we don't have a partnership agreement, is what you see when I first load this page, this form you see here. So that said, when we do have a partnership agreement, then we're going to show a different set of information. We're going to show this CA prod row, the CPA prod row component, and this is a custom component. So if we look at what that custom component's doing, we can look at its HTML, and we'll scroll over here. We pull it back up. We'll scroll over here to the top, and you can see that we've got another Lightning layout system, and we're saying if true line items. So we're only going to display the line items if they're there. And then we're going to turn around, and on our left side, we're using a Lightning layout to split this section into 2 bits. Here, let me get to that page. I can type or I can talk. Apparently. Let me create that. All right, so we're using this Lightning layout here to divide our card body into 2 sections. The first section is over here where we've got the table on the left, and the second section is our new on the right. And so we've got a header basically, right here, that's going to show us the header, which is this. And then we've got a CI line item component, a custom component that we've also created that is going to draw the individual rows, right? So fairly straightforward there. We don't have a lot of interaction going on so far, but if we want to do some interaction, what we need to do is look at what happens when we add a new item. So let's go into the new PA line item, HTML, and this is our new PA line item, HTML. And you can see that it's pretty basic. We just have a Lightning record edit form.
Kevin, can you bring the code up to the front, the web pages? Yeah. There we go.
Yep. Now, Brian, why did we choose to make our new its own component?
Well, when I first did this, tried to do everything in one big component because that's kind of what I was used to with Visualforce. And to you set me straight. Having it as its new component gives it a lot more flexibility because if I have to do something similar and have people be able to create these line items someplace else on the page, I already have the component created. I don't have to start from scratch. So that's part of it. It's modularity, right? Being able to reuse things over and over and over again. The other reason why I like having it as its own component is if something changes that impacts, like maybe they need to put in a new field, I have to update the whole project. I just have to update this one component, which makes it a lot more easier from a maintenance standpoint and faster for the customer to just have me deal with one set of component versus having to go through an entire page and try to remember what method is doing what and so forth.
Can I use like a software development buzzword?
Yeah, I'm not a programmer, so please do.
I think using components makes the project more agile because you can actually go in and change one little thing rather than having to change the whole project. It makes your testing of it easier because you can test just the logic of the thing you changed as well. So we've got our component that is going to draw that new line item. Now, if you look in here, we're not doing anything special to make this a columnar format over there for the right-hand side. That's handled by our parent component's Lightning layout. But what we are doing, and this is kind of cool, we're using this, I'm setting a custom class called resettable. And when I set the custom class as resettable, that'll allow me to actually go in and reset the form so that if you add one thing, it'll reset the form back to where it was, and we can go in and add another thing, another line item. So this is the class resettable. Now,
your class is just off the screen, by the way.
Oh.
People see class res.
Yeah, here, let me make this this a little bit wider. How's that?
That's much better.
That's much better. Okay. So we have this is our new PA line item bit. Now let's look at actually the JavaScript for what's going on. So we've got this new PA line item JavaScript class, and we've got a bunch of methods in here. Some of them are fairly standard. They're the handlers for what we're, when somebody changes the quantity. And we've also got this handle product selection. In our component, we've got a select box, a Lightning combo box that allows us to choose products. And those products are coming back from a Apex server-side controller class. So if we look at what those are going to come, where they're going to come from, you'll see that when we draw our combo box.
Visual code is,
yeah.
There we go.
When we draw our combo box, it's going to come from options. And those options are listed here in our get options property. And all we're going to do is we're going to go over our list of item options that come in from our wire protocol. And we'll go over those one by one, and we'll just output what we want to be the label, in this case, the code or the name, and then the ID. On the flip side of that, if somebody adds an ID, we want to be able to say, okay, take this ID, add it to the list, get some other information, and allow us to use it. But in order to do that, we've got to set our component up so that actually something happens when they click Create New. So if we could choose a product here, you can see nothing happens other than the form resets. So let's talk about how we do that. And that is on our onSuccess method. So we can do a lot with our onSuccess method. You can literally do pretty much the sky's the limit. Do you have Any ideas of what you'd like to do with it?
Well, probably add it to the list on the left-hand side would be the first thing I would want to do.
Okay.
Right?
So
create the record and have it show up.
So the first thing we have to do actually is prevent the default thing from happening. So to do that, we use event.preventDefault.
What's the default?
The default would be to pass the event up and not really do anything. So we want to basically pause the event process here and go in and actually say, okay, we're going to do some extra work, and then we can continue. Okay. One of our bits of extra work that we want to do is to create an event of our own so we can push that event up. Now, when we push events up, that allows us to have other components listening for that event, and this is how we achieve our inter-component communication. So to do that, we can create a constant. What should we call our constant? Let's call it select event.
Selection.
And we'll say this is equal to new custom event. And let's put in some information here. We got to give our event a name. Now this is a crucial bit because that name has to match what our other component is listening for. So I'm going to call this one very creatively new line item. And then I'm going to start a method here. So this is going to be our information that we're going to pass in. And the information we want to pass back to the parent is the detail ID. So we'll say detail : event dot detail dot ID. And I think that's all we got to do there. We give that a semicolon. So now we've got our event. We got to actually do something with that event. So we have to fire that. And I'm going to say this dot dispatch event. My selected event is going to populate there. And let's save that. Let's see how this should save just fine. There's no errors going on. But if we go into our page over here and we were to reload this, we wouldn't actually see anything new.
Oh, we didn't change any HTML.
Right, we didn't change any HTML. So we'll just put those in there. And if we click create new, there's still nothing really happening. But in the background, it is creating that record for us, and we can look at that. I've put myself in debug mode, Lightning debug mode, and you'll see that you'll notice I've got these two green bars up here telling me I'm in debug mode. They're giving me the timings of things. But if I inspect this, if I inspect my page itself, oh, and this is very tiny. Let's see if I can't make that bigger. I'm going to go into sources. And over here and under Lightning modules /C, that's my custom component namespace. I've got all of the JavaScript controllers here, and we're working with new PA line item. So if I open that up, this is the served page source, the served JavaScript source. And one of these things that I have down here is going to be a list of methods. So here's my constructor, and then here's my onSuccess. And my onSuccess hasn't been populated yet. I haven't saved this to the server. But when I do, I'll be able to put like a breakpoint in there and see what's happening. So let me reload this page. And we'll have to put in a new partnership agreement. And create that. And you see now I've got down here in my sources, I've got exactly what I have in my editor. These two match. And I can put a breakpoint in. So if I put a breakpoint in here, I can see when I use my page, if I choose Idea Wizard, say I want 1, it's not actually letting me type. There we go.
There we go.
I was like, what's going on? But okay, so it stopped there, and here I've line item. So if we were to copy that and go back up to our, we could pull that open in Salesforce. I won't actually do that now, but you'll see also that we're paused in the debugger. The debugger is really powerful and it gives us a lot of tools. One of the things you can do is create these different breakpoints by clicking on the line item number and then switch between the breakpoints during execution. So here we are, we've stopped, we can inspect elements that are things that are happening, and then we can also turn around and say, okay, go to the next one by clicking the little next arrow. And here we go. And you'll see that the stuff here in red up here, those are the values of the objects as they've been calculated since our last breakpoint. So here's our event object, here's our select object, etc. And if I do this, nothing really happened, right? Because we still haven't coded anybody to listen for that event. So let's look at what that looks like. So we've got our event firing. Now we can go into our pa_prod_row.html, and let's go down here to where we've got our new PA line item component. And to handle this, we're going to say on new line item equals handle select. And if you're like, that's terribly vague and generic, let me show you what's going on. Anything that starts with on is going to be an on event handler. And then this new line item has to exactly match the event that we're firing from our on success method. So you see new line item here, and then we go back to our component. If I click on the right file, here's our new line item. And what happens when we get into this is our handle select method is going to fire. So if we look at our pa_prod_row.js, we don't have a handle select method, so we've got to actually handle doing something there. And to do that, let's code just a basic on event handler. So we'll say handle select. That's going to take an event, isn't it? And then here we can say, well, what do we want to do when they've selected it?
I would want to add it to the list of the rows. Well, since it's recorded, we pretty much just have to refresh the query.
Oh, well, so
right?
We could just run refresh apex. Now, in order to use refresh apex, you have to import it from Salesforce/apex. But once you've done that, you've got access to this method called refresh apex, and then you just pass it in the name of your variable that's holding your information. I'll show you how that wires up in just a second. But in my case, it's provision value, right? So we'll say that. Now this is going to recall our server-side controller and get the information back again. And it's going to do so based on the value that I've passed in. And this value that I've passed in is our provision value. And where that comes from is right down here in our wired line items. So I'm using this @wire method to pass in to the find line items server-side method this JavaScript JSON. And then out of it is going to be this wired line items object or method that I'm running, and I'm going to accept the method provision value. So this provision value is going to contain both the data and any errors that come back, and you'll see that later I'm destructuring those here. But for right now, I'm just going to set the provision value equal to this so that I can reuse that when I want to refresh the Apex. So let's save that and see what happens when we run this again. Okay, push that up and we'll reload the page.
And create another parent.
Mm-hmm, yeah. The joy of testing, you get to create all sorts of things.
I cheated occasionally and just had it so it would pre-fill the page.
Yeah. All right, so here's our product line items. I'm going to scroll this up a little bit. Now you'll notice that our debugger down here still has the breakpoints we put in. So when we add something over here, say idea wizard, say we want 3 idea wizards added, when we click create new, it's going to stop at our breakpoint. We see that it's created it, that's good. We could look here for the we can just do the inspection and see what event detail.id is. So we know that worked, and we can hit next, and it's going to dispatch that event. And here's our idea wizard that was just added. Now all that was a little disjointed because of the breakpoints, so let's do another one here with it's a little bit more interesting. Let's do a podcast, and we'll say we want 6 podcasts. Oh, not -32. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit more, and if I hit create new, it automatically added it right down there. So we've got this component over here on the right, which is a new product addition, communicating with our parent component, and when it notifies the parent component that something's been added, the parent component refreshes the data from Salesforce, which is pretty cool, pretty useful. And we did that. It's fast, and we did it all with a very, very few lines of code. We did it with 3 lines of code here, and then we did it with our we go to the right file with yeah, we did it here in the HTML by adding the listener to it for the PA prod row, like this. So basically 5 lines of code. We've added the ability to refresh our list.
On, Kevin, Visual Studio's not showing your highlight.
Oh, hey.
It's doing new PA line item.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, technology. So 5 lines of code, we're updating that. Now we could make this a little bit better, because if we go back over here and look at this, we just added the podcast with a quantity of 7, but our form over here is still set up with what we chose before. So what should we do to fix that?
I would clear it out or hide the component. I mean, probably clear it out makes a lot more sense, because if you hide the component, that means they can only add 1 item.
Okay.
Right? But I mean, you wouldn't want the values to stay there, because they're not going to add the same product over and over and over again.
Right. And to sort of, build that out, I've created this reset form function. And this reset form function is going to look for using the template query selector. If you've used jQuery, this is similar to like getting a CSS selector, but it's tied to the template, not the DOM, right? So this template's query selector, and I'm going to go get all of the Lightning input field elements with a class of resettable. Now, if you remember over in my HTML, I added the class resettable to certain fields. I added that to 4 of them, but I intentionally left it off of the partnership agreement field. And we'll see why here in just a second. But in our PA prod row, when I run on our new PA line item JS, when I run my on success, I can then turn around and call this reset form, because all it's going to do is find all of my resettable Lightning input fields and reset them by accessing the reset function, which is built into the Lightning base component. So let's do that. Let's add this up here. So we've got this reset form. Okay, and we'll save that. We're going to create another parent record.
We're going to create another parent record.
We're going to create another parent record. Let's refresh this.
This is another reason why the form has been slimmed down, because the other form had something like 35 fields on it.
That seems like a UI nightmare.
It is a UI nightmare.
All right, so here we create our partnership agreement. Back to where we were. What product should we choose?
Oh, let's do WA.
What is WA?
Wizard Apprentice.
Oh.
That's my YouTube series.
Okay, well, we've just added WA to it, and you look over here, it reset our component there. So we've built out a fairly awesome UI, if I can pat myself on the back.
Oh, absolutely. The pat is well deserved.
And we could do a little thing. We could do some things to make it better. Like we got this little wrapping here, but for right now, I think this is pretty good. But when you were going through our use case, didn't you say that this was originally exposed to like a public site so that people could go in and start filling out information?
That's absolutely correct, because this is actually a manufacturing company, and so their sales reps are other companies who don't have access to their Salesforce and don't want it. And so this is a public form that, as long as you have the URL, you can come in and fill out the form.
Okay. So do you think we can make that work with Lightning Web Components?
I would hope so. There's something I heard called Lightning Out.
Yeah, it's a beta feature.
Yeah. And there's also a nice tab there as a segue.
As a segue, yes. There is a Lightning Out. Let's talk about how we actually make the Lightning Out work, because it's a little unintuitive. It's pretty easy, but it's a little unintuitive. So the first thing we're going to do when we create our Lightning Out is to create a new Visualforce page. Why a Visualforce page? Because we're going to use Visualforce to host our Lightning Out component so that we can turn around and use the public sites feature of Salesforce to expose that Visualforce page.
And unlike a community, you don't have any pages to begin with. You have to create your own.
Exactly. So we had to create our own. So we're going to use this is turtles all the way down. We're going to use public sites to expose a Visualforce page that exposes a Lightning Out app that exposes our partnership agreement component. Right?
Right.
Okay, just making sure I'm keeping track of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new Lightning page.
Visual Studio
page
in the background.
Yeah, Visual Studio is in the background. And I'm going to create a new Visualforce page here. And I'm going to say live demo and just call it live demo. Put it in the standard directory, and it should open up there.
Congratulations, you have a new page.
Yeah, isn't that great? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this information. Now, the first thing we need to do is include Lightning. So does anybody remember how to do that? It's been a while since I wrote Visualforce.
Aura, Lightning include.
Is it? Let's look here.
I have no idea.
I've
written a total of one Lightning component in my life.
Okay.
I was close.
Yeah, there we go. Include Lightning. Like I said, it's been a while since I wrote Visualforce, so we'll do that. Okay, now that we've included Lightning, we need a div to hold our Lightning Out component. So we'll say div, and we'll call this, we'll give it an ID, container. And here is where we will put our actual Lightning Out app. So Lightning Out it needs to be inside of a Lightning Out app. And that is an Aura app. So we'll create a new app here. Lightning app. And we'll call this one Lightning Out Demo 2. And here's our application. Now, our application is going to be hosted on our demo page inside this container. And to do that, we need to put in some JavaScript on our page. So I'm going to create a script element. And I'm going to use the magic of television to look at how I did this before.
I believe it's $L for lightning.use.
Yeah.
Parentheses.
I'm totally cribbing from what I figured out before. So here's our Lightning Out bit, and it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to use this PA Lightning Out app. This is the Lightning app that we just created. And it's going to then call create component. So our app is going to load all the information we need, all the components and dependencies, and then we're going to call create component with the actual component we want to display. We're going to put it in our container, and then we're going to just debug something to the console log when that works out just fine. So I tested this out with the Lightning Out demo page, and everything here looks pretty much identical to what I have there. So let's actually look at what that looks like inside of our app. Here's a Visualforce page that uses Lightning Out. And you'll see that it takes just a second longer to load. But here we go. Here's our Lightning, here's a Visualforce page. You can see that it's it's showing up with a Lightning URL because we were in Lightning mode. But if I did apex lightning out demo, you'd see it load here in what is essentially an empty Visualforce page. And it loads that component up, and we can start working with it. We can do hello CodeLive.
Except for that's an email.
Yeah, hello at CodeLive.com, and create our partnership agreement. And you'll see everything is working just like we had it working in our Lightning Web Component app page, but now it's working in Lightning Out. And it's even including our partnership agreement and everything else for us. So if we were to choose Idea Wizard, we could create new, then added that one.
There it is.
Should we add WA again?
Sure.
All right, there you go. And we can also add quantities to these. So we just did another one with a quantity of 12. Let's do a podcast with a quantity of 2. There we go. Added it there. I think that pretty much replicates our Visualforce page, doesn't it? Are we missing anything?
Well, we're not removing any rows right now.
That's true. We're not removing rows.
But
you want to tackle that?
We sure. It shouldn't be that hard, right?
Famous last words. Famous last words. Okay. So on our, we've got a component that is going to display our actual line items. That's this line item tile component.
Yep.
Here's what the HTML looks like for that.
You want to put Visual Studio in the foreground?
I should, yes. Okay, so we've got that working, and then we should find, well, first off, let's do this. Let's look at where we're going to put our remove button. So here it is in our Salesforce instance that's loading. And then,
in the Visualforce page, I put it all the way onto the right-hand side.
Yep. So we've got an item here. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see that our Lightning
Visual
layout.
Studio's in the background.
If you look carefully, you'll see that all of our size entries on our Lightning layout items here total 12. It's because our Lightning layout item is based on a grid of 12 columns. So if we've got 1 here for the icon or the image, 3 for the name, 4 for the description, and 4 for the quantity. If we were to add another one in here, let's try this. Lightning layout item padding equals round small, size equals, you can probably do with 1, right?
Yeah, and you can do with 1 R and around.
Yeah, I probably could too. Okay, round. And then we have to lose one of these here. So let's lose, I don't know, let's lose 1 on description because we have to add up to 12. And here we can put in lightning button.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Lightning button. And we should probably add some attributes to that. I have an example of the other button over here, so I'm just going to jump over and look at that button. Where did I put that button?
Line 38 and new PA line item.
PA line item 38, here we go. So I'm just going to copy that over to our line item tile component. And we're going to give it a name of remove. Just type submit, and we should give it a handler. So we should say on
remove.
On submit, and we'll say delete row. That?
Yep. And now we need to create that handler in the JavaScript.
Yeah, I'm reading what the, yeah, I don't need the quotes around that. I was getting an error message. I was like, what's going on? And then, oh yeah, I don't need the quotes around that. So in our line item tile component, JavaScript, we need to create a remove, what do we call it? Delete row.
Remove row or delete row?
Delete row. And let's see, and that's going to be tied to a specific row, so we don't need to include any different items. And then here we're going to have to create some imperative JavaScript to call back to our client side or our server side to delete that row. So I've created, we've created a PA-LWC utils class. This is where all of our queries, etc., are. So let's add that, and then we can, what's the most efficient way to delete this? Just query it and then run delete?
Yeah, or just delete with the query.
From, what's our object here again?
Partner agreement product. I believe __ C. I believe that is correct.
Partner agreement product. Like that.
Yeah, partner _ agreement _ product _ C.
Okay. I'm going to make this pretty because I'm picky.
Yeah, you do that. Look at the pretty colors.
Let's do return. Well, let me do that. Does delete return a Boolean? I forget. Find out.
I don't think it does.
It's saving. The suspense is killing me. Oh no, failed to run. Oh, no, it, okay, it doesn't like that.
Yeah.
So, fine.
I would put this in a try catch.
Yeah, try catch would be fine. Try catch, what are we catching?
The exception, right?
Well, what kind of exception?
That's a DML exception.
DML exception. DML. I'm just going to return false there. All right, so we got to try. I'm going to delete this. If that succeeds, we'll return true. Otherwise, if we catch an exception, we'll return false. Let's see if it lets us save this time.
The anticipation. It's palatable.
There it goes. It worked. All right. So that worked. And then we've got our page. So we've got this we can call. Let's go back to our
line item tile JS.
We're going to have to import delete row from Salesforce Apex PA_delete row. And so here we can call delete row. We're going to have to pass in our parameters. This is called row. I wish you could see the pretty, my editor is on my screen is showing me the completion, is showing me what my method needs to look like. But for whatever reason, that doesn't broadcast over live code or live share.
Well, that's disappointing.
So do this dot line item. And line item is an ID, correct? Or is it an ID?
Line item is an object, so it would be line item.id.
Okay. So we're going to do that, and then result And then we'll do another one, catch. Give it some of those. That makes sense. Happy little accidents over here. Oh, we got a red error going on. What's going on? Oh, its value is never read. Fine.
We read your value.
Yep. And we'll do this one. Okay. Let's see if that lets us save. It's going to give me an error on console log because
it doesn't like console log.
It doesn't like console log, but that'll work. We're not going to get an error from it. If we delete the row,
we need to refresh the list.
We need to refresh the list. And that's going to be interesting. So our new PA line item, excuse me, our PA prod row template has these, and we want to listen for an event. We're going to basically crib what we did for this one, and we're going to put it up here. And our event that we're going to listen for is going to be on remove item. We'll save that. Now our PA prod row is going to have to handle a method called remove item, and we'll do the same thing.
Refresh the apex.
Yeah. Save that. So over here in our, so we've done everything except emit the event. And when we emitted the event on the new PA line item, we did it in the on success, and it looked like this. So I'm just going to copy this method here, and then we'll go into our item line item tile, and we're going to do, this one is remove item. Yeah, all lowercase. Pass in the ID. We don't have a reset form one, so we'll just get rid of that, and we'll dispatch that event up. So that is the on success handler. And we don't actually need it in an on success handler because we're not successfully doing anything. So we probably need to do that here. So we should move this down here into our then method. And it's going to be actually a result. Oh no. We'll just do result here. Okay. So we don't have an on success handler, but we do have this imperative to the row button. All right, now we've done a lot of coding here. Let's see what this looks like in the UI. Again, the suspense is killing me.
Isn't it nice when guests pull things last minute without telling you?
Yeah. Create the partnership agreement. Okay. Oh, so we've got a little issue where we haven't got our UI code quite right because we've got the buttons overlapping. So we obviously need to have a smaller button area. Let's look at the line item tile HTML. And we have a size 1 for our button. We obviously need 2. And so let's make this one 3 as well. Let's see what that looks like. We're going to create another partnership agreement.
So many partnership agreements.
I'm wondering why my browser hasn't started remembering how to fill in this form for me. Okay, there we go. Hey, look at that.
Oh, it looks so much nicer.
It does look so much nicer. Which one of these should we remove?
You know, let's get rid of the wizard hat. Third row.
The wizard hat?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm pressing it and nothing is happening.
Nothing's happening.
Let's debug that. So if we're looking at our new PA, probably looking at the wrong one. So let's look at, we want PA prod row.js. And let's put a breakpoint in on down here where we've got a remove item. So let's see if we ever capture this. Okay, so we're not actually getting that.
So that's probably down at the line item tile.js.
Yeah. We'll scroll down to the delete row method, and let's catch whether or not we're down here in the error or whether we're in this. So when we click that button, oh, you know what? I don't think we tied the button to anything. So our line item.
Oh, we don't have an action.
Here's our button, and it's going to call delete row. So that's there. Why is it not calling delete row? Let's try that. Interesting. So we've got a button, and on submit, it's probably not on submit, it probably needs to be on click because we're not in a form to submit. So let's try that. I just changed it in the code without flipping over to Visual Studio.
Without showing it.
While that's saving and we're reloading here, we've got a couple of questions from the community. The first one is, how do I turn on the Lightning Debugger? One of my favorite things about this is all you have to do is go into settings and, into setup, and you can search for Debugger. Sorry, search for debug, and it's Lightning Components debug mode. And when the page loads, you'll see a list of usernames. You can select one and enable debug mode for that person. So I'm going to turn it on for Mark. Sorry, Mark. It does slow things down a little bit, but now you see that there's debug mode turned on for those people. Here's our partnership agreement page. Let's go back to this. Now let's try removing the wizard hat. Okay, now we're in our delete row method. It did breakpoint on that, so that's good. And then let's just walk through this a little bit. So, okay, we got a result back, and we're not in the error, we're not in the catch block, so we got a good result back. So here we're gonna dispatch our event. Oh, look, it took it out.
Yeah, it's gone.
Huzzah!
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 Now I have wizard hat hair.
It's okay. At least you have hair. Let's see what other questions we've gotten from the community. Let's see. Do we still need to create a community page to enable a public site hosting LWC? I'm not sure I understand your question. We have a similar question though, and I'm going to answer it to see if maybe they are. If we answer one, we answer the other as well. So the other question is. Lightning out is used only because we want to put the Visualforce page on sites, or do we need that to display it on a VF page, irrespective of whether or not we use it on sites? And the answer to that question is you have to use Lightning out if you want your if you want your Lightning Web Components to show up on Visualforce. So that Lightning out is how we get Lightning Web Components into a Visualforce page. So if you're just mixing and matching Lightning Web Components and Visualforce things together, you still have to use that Lightning out. Then we've got one says, why are we showing quantity label in each row when we have it in the header already? That's a good usability question, and it has to do with how our app is, how I wrote this, how we built this. You know, we've got the quantity here, and we've also quantity up here in the header row. So if we were looking at our row information here, and this is our line item tile component, you'll see down here there's this lightning input. And lightning input by default shows you the label for the field you're putting it on. Now there's a couple of, I think we can do label hidden maybe. Let's try that. Let's do label hidden. Save that. See if that variant gives us one without the label. That would be a nice usability win. We're gonna have to create another partner agreement.
It's going to make it look like I'm really doing my job well.
Never hurts to look good for your boss. All right, here we go. There we go.
Yeah, there we
We've
go.
taken it out. So that was a great question. And then somebody was asking if we can do a blog post about the plugins that I'm using for Visual Studio Code. You know, that's a great idea. How about I do a blog post on how I've configured Visual Studio Code? I'm a very color-oriented person. I like my colors. The colors you're seeing over here are actually from a theme called Kodi Midnight. So if you went into the plugins section, you could install that theme for Kodi Midnight. Due to the magic of television and how this works, the theme I use on my screen, the one that I'm seeing when I write code, is different than the one you're seeing, and the one that Brian is seeing is different yet still from Kodi Midnight. So yeah, we can get I think we can probably get a blog post out there about the arrows and all that other work set up on how I did my Visual Studio Code. So I think those are all the questions we have for right now. Let's see. Do we have to be part of a pilot for Lightning Out? Somebody else wanted to know. It's in beta, so I don't believe so. It'll work in a dev org, if I remember my definitions correctly. And let's see here. Any other questions? Resettable only works with text fields. How are you resetting the form but not the drop-down field? So that works in any of the fields that I've set up. Let me show you how this works.
But the class is resettable.
Yeah, so this query select all code right here is going to find me all of the elements of a Lightning input field, so any Lightning input field, that also have the class of resettable. So in my code for this, here's my Lightning input field element, and I'm setting the class to resettable. Now, the way my JavaScript is working, it's going to find everything that matches resettable and then just loop through it and calling the reset field method. Now, I didn't want to reset that partnership agreement ID, the combo box at the very top. So what I did is I specifically set that one, this partnership agreement for the Lightning input field does not have the class resettable set. So this one is ignored. It's a great question. And how do we get the ID of the row in which you were deleting? The row in which we were deleting is, let's see here. So we could refactor our apex to say that this is not a Boolean, but an ID, and then return row ID. Excuse me. We can return row ID either way.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's going to come back as our row ID. Whatever we pass in is going to have the row ID passed back from it. Somebody's also got another question here. We use generate PDF from a Visualforce page. If we put LWC on Visualforce page, can we generate PDF with the LWC in the content? I have no idea. I've never thought about doing that.
I would bet not.
Yeah.
Just knowing how weird PDFs do with Visualforce.
Well, maybe we could, but the PDF would be wonky.
Yeah.
That's one of those things I think you're going to have to try because of PDF generation being what it is.
You know, the previous question about how do we get the ID of the row which you're deleting, I think it was more specific to how are we telling the Apex, hey, this is the ID I want you to delete. So if you go to the line item tile JS, so this is where HTML.
Oh, line item HTML.
I misspoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, line item HTML, next tab over. Because this is where we put the delete button, the remove button. It's on the tile that represents a single record, right? So it doesn't actually know, hey, this record exists in whatever order in the components that lists all the records. It just knows the ID for this record. So that means when we go into the JavaScript for line item tile and we are referencing this line item ID, it's only getting this record's ID. It doesn't know anything else about any of the other records, which vastly simpler than what I ended up having to do with Visualforce, which was a bunch of combinations of JavaScripts and passing parameters and big headache.
Yeah. And let me point out one more thing here. So in our PA prod row, this is where the line item titles are included. You'll see that we're passing in the line item here, and we're passing that in from a for each subtemplate. So our for each subtemplate is going to have a current iteration variable called prod, and we're passing in that product or prod into the line item via an API decorator. So you see that API decorator. When you have that a variable decorated with that API, when you put the markup on the page for that component, you can pass that data in on the line item. So when our component is drawn on the page, the controller is passed in the product line item, and then later on here, when we go to click delete row, we're passing in this line item .id. So we're taking that line item and passing in the ID to our apex. All right, with that said, we are just a couple minutes over. I think we've answered all the questions that we're going to be able to get to today. So let's say sayonara, thank you very much. We'll see you again next week. I'll be joined with Ryan Headley, and Ryan and I will be talking about doing code reviews. So before I forget, here's just a quick run through of what we did today as an overview. We took a Visualforce page, we sliced it and diced it into Lightning Web Components, and then we put those back together in a page, having the components talk to one another. And then we built out a Lightning Aura component, put that on a Visualforce page, and used Lightning Out to pull our component back onto a Visualforce page that we could do things like expose publicly with. Things to take away. It seems sort of duh-ish, but Lightning Web Components are cool. I really like working with them. They are very exciting technology. When you need to communicate between things, you have to use an event. Between those components, you use events to communicate. And if you wrap your Lightning Web Component in an Aura app and then expose that via Lightning Out, you can put those on a Visualforce page through sites. Okay? Or community. We've got a trailhead put together, as you might imagine, a trail mix on Trailhead for you. You can get to that on this URL, and it's got a couple of things in there. One on JavaScript skills for Salesforce developers and Lightning Web Components, and then the second one is all about Lightning Out. So if you want to learn more about Lightning Out, there's a link there to that. Again, next week, code reviews with Ryan Headley. We're going to talk about how you can do awesome code reviews and how to make them useful for both the developer and for your code quality. And until then, I want to encourage you to sign up and register for other CodeLive events at trailhead.salesforce.com, link there. And then one last thing, at Dreamforce this year, we're going to be having a competition we like to call Iron Coder, where we're going to take one of the other dev evangelists, a gentleman named Renee Winkelmeyer, and we're going to pit him against one or more contestants from the community. Now, we've got a little bit of a make sure you're going to be there, fill out this form, sign up to challenge the Winkelmeyer at that URL, that bit.ly URL. So I want to encourage you to go hit that URL, and then we'll be able to figure out who's going to register and challenge the Winkelmeyer. To make things, hard on him, we're going to, definitely make our secret ingredient, like API 11 or something ancient way before you started doing work with Salesforce, just to make things interesting. All right, with that said, thank you very much. Again, you're going to get the survey here in just a second when you close this out, and thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.